Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the CBT podcast. I'm here with Ethan. I'm here with Rod, and today we're going to be talking about my favorite player in the NBA, Ethan's as well, Jayson Tatum. So Jayson Tatum, when you rank him in the NBA hierarchy, we agreed that he could go as high as 9 and also as low as 14. So the 8 players we have ahead of him in no particular order are Giannis, KD, Jokic, Steph, Embiid, Luka, LeBron, and Kawhi. So Rod, why don't you tell us a little bit about your favorite player as well, Jayson Tatum?
First of all, I can already smell the Celtics bias in this video coming from a mile away. I am the world's #1 Celtics hater, but my duty as America's truth dealer supersedes that. And so get ready for this crystal meth bit of truth I'm about to dish out right here. First of all, I want to say, whenever I think of a player in this type of a manner, I go straight to their playoff performances and stats. Quite frankly, I don't care what you do in the regular season because once we start getting into this top 15 discussion, regular season stats and awards are irrelevant to me.
Ignorant.
I want to see who you are when it matters most against top competition. I could care less what you do against the poor Charlotte Hornets in the regular season. So let's get into it. And in fairness to Tatum, everybody I talk about here, I am only taking into account their last 3 playoff performances because Tatum has only been an all-star for 3 years, so I did that across the board for everybody.
But we're talking about Tatum right now. We should be talking about the last playoff performance and only the last playoff performance. I don't care what they did 2 years ago because 2 years ago was 2 years ago.
Talk about
if we did
the
that after the bubble,
2022-2023 season, guy.
If we did that after the bubble, TJ Warren would have been a top 10 player. So that has room for error. My method has no room for error. It's flawless. So, anyways, getting into it.
Fraudulent.
Over his last 46 playoff games, that's the sample size, 46 playoff games over his last 3 appearances, he has averaged 40 minutes a game. Poor Tatum knees. He shot 42.9% from the field. That's pretty rough, but you also have to take into account he is a jump shot based forward. He's not a traditional slasher, power forward, big man attacking the rim, so it's not horrible.
Well, he's a small forward.
He plays power forward a lot. And then 38.5% from 3. That's actually better than I would have thought. Good job, Tatum. But then we get into the free throw percentage. He's not Jaylen Brown levels yet. Low 80s on a good amount of attempts. Room for improvement, but not a bad free throw shooter. We get to, 45.6% inside the arc in the playoffs. I know he's still a jump shot based forward, but that has to improve. And we get into his defense. I can't hate there. He's a good defender, very good defender. The playmaking and the assist to turnover ratio for Tatum, 5.8 assists over his last 3 playoffs to 3.5 turnovers. I have no issue saying that's his biggest weakness right now in his game is his lack of playmaking or his great ability to turn the ball over, whether it's off his knee, out of bounds to the other team. That's what he does best right now. And 7.8 rebounds a game. I mean, it's more so just out of necessity. He's not really a great rebounder or a bad rebounder. That's kind of an irrelevant stat.
All right, I'm going to stop you right there for a second before I throw this to Ethan to hear what he has to say. But I think by taking the last 3 playoff runs is way too big of a sample size for a player like Jayson Tatum, a guy who has blossomed 3 seasons ago, 3rd team All-NBA. Last season wasn't even All-NBA. And I think you're forgetting, we're talking about a first-team All-NBA player this season. This past year,
players got hurt.
He averaged 27, 8, and 4 on 45, 35, 85 splits in the regular season last year. This is a different player than we saw last year against Brooklyn in the playoffs and in the bubble. Entirely different.
Like I said, my system takes into account what it does is it regulates. If a player had a bad playoff performance recently, it takes into account a longer stretch of time. If a player had a really good playoffs this previous season, it evens it out. So my system, it's just I would rather look at a larger sample size than just based off of last season. I think that's too reactionary.
Hey, we're talking about right now, though.
Yeah, right now.
You know what, Ethan? I want to hear what you have to say. You haven't said anything yet.
I'm just baffled by this, man. That's crazy. You're nitpicking a guy that's 25 years old. 24, sorry.
Not even
24. Yeah. You're over here talking about everyone knows playmaking is his weakness. He actually got better throughout the season, which was very surprising because at the beginning of the season, he could not throw it to a green or white jersey at all. Let me tell you, he was giving it to the other team. And so those demons came up and followed him up on all the way until the finals, and he blew it, and we understand. But
Understatement of the year.
now let me tell you what's really going on, because you never gave me where he was in your hierarchy.
You cut me off before.
Yeah, because I don't even want to hear.
You were
it.
saying blasphemy.
So-
his stats are blasphemy.
JJ, you and I can agree that there are 8 players better.
As
There
we
are 8
previously
players.
listed, yeah.
Yep, that
Oh,
means
at
that Jayson
least.
Tatum is at either number 9 or number 10. One could argue he could be at number 10, considering the fact that I think the only person that could be better than him, and at times is James Harden. I think James Harden is the only X factor that would put Jayson Tatum at 10 instead of 9. I hold James Harden to a high standard from what he did in Houston and what he also did in the first season with the Nets. But other than that, I'd put Jayson Tatum at number 9 if it weren't for
Okay,
that.
for reference, we have the top 8 players that we previously listed, and then the players who come up 9 through 14 in no order. Once again, is Jayson Tatum, Damian Lillard, Chris Paul, Anthony Davis, James Harden, and Paul George. So, Rod, you said you haven't gotten to say where you think he should be. Where do you think the GOAT should be?
The GOAT should be. Let me tell you where I have him and then why I have him there. I have him at number 14 in the NBA, and let me tell you why. When I think of everybody in my first tier includes a little bit more than the 8 guys y'all just named. But when I look at those guys, they can do one of 2 things. They can either elevate the players around them, i.e., Jokic, Curry, LeBron, CP3, or they can just by themselves carry their team on their back throughout an entire playoff run, i.e., Kawhi, KD, Giannis, Embiid, Luka, or Dame. I do not think Tatum can do either one of those things because he is still stuck in his same mold he came into the league with, which is a scoring wing. He is a great scorer. He is sometimes an efficient scorer, but he has the typical flaws that a scoring wing would have. He's not a great playmaker, and he struggles if his jump shot is off to do anything that could carry his team to victory. And Ethan, you just mentioned James Harden. Let me tell you why it's not even an argument for me. Obviously, Harden's in my top tier because he can uplift those around him. And 2 years ago, he averaged 34.3 points per game. He was still in MVP talks last season with the Nets before he got hurt in the playoffs. He had a bad playoffs, even though he still averaged 20 points and 8 assists. But this previous season, we all agree, worst season of Harden's last 10 years. He had a horrible start, inefficiency, and he still averaged 20 points and 10 assists per game. If Harden is average next season for Harden's standards, this isn't even a conversation. The only reason we're having this conversation is because James Harden had a down year of 20 points and 10 assists, in which I still think is debatably better than what Tatum did just last season. But when you take into account this 3-year stretch that I have and I evaluate, it's just not even a competition. Harden's last 3 years have just been so much better than anything Tatum has done recently.
Now, I think you are seriously underestimating Tatum's ability as a playmaker. Now, even those finals games, which we all know he was hot garbage in, the game 1, he shot something like 23%, something terrible, but he had like 13 assists to go along with it. When we saw peak Tatum, the best I've ever seen Tatum play in his whole career was that first round series against Brooklyn, where he put up 30 points, 5 rebounds, and 7 assists per game while shooting 46, 42, 87 splits, while holding Kevin Durant, the most talented offensive player in NBA history, to 38% from the field and 33% from 3. I have never seen a player lock up Kevin Durant to the extent that Tatum did in that first round, while going out and dropping 30 a game, playmaking for all his teammates, and just doing what you need to do. I think in that series, we definitely saw Tatum making his teammates better. And we also saw him carrying the Celtics on his back with a little bit of help from Jaylen Brown.
Well, I just don't take one series into account. I take the last dozen or so series that he's played. That's why I have a big sample size.
Large of a sample
one
size
bad series or one good series cannot sway the majority. That's why it's fair to Tatum and fair to all the other people.
Let's look at his whole playoffs last season. It's sure that your system may be fair to older players like CP3, Dame, Harden, whatever.
It's not fair to older players. It's the most recent 3 seasons. It's unfair. It's biased.
When you have a player as young as Tatum is, with a game evolving as much as his game has been over the past few seasons, that system is entirely flawed.
Tatum, you haven't been watching him at all like how we have. Like Tatum has evolved tremendously, even through this season, like I said, with his playmaking. Like you don't realize how well he's. And ever since he was on the USA team, his defense has also taken like 2 steps forward. It's been crazy. Like to lock up KD, how many players do you know that could do that?
So are we now going to pretend that Tatum was the only player who was giving KD problems in the
No,
first
no one's
round?
but he was the primary
No,
defender on
yeah.
KD.
Okay.
No one ever defends someone an entire series. That doesn't work.
And we're not talking about just one. We're talking about in general. His defense has gotten tremendously better than when he got into the league. That scrawny boy that came into the league that dunked on LeBron is no longer scrawny. He's gotten buffer. He's gotten actually a lot faster, in my opinion, especially on the defensive end. Offensively, I mean, yeah, his playmaking isn't the best, and sometimes it gets to his head, driving to the basket, trying to finish in the lane. But other than that, Tatum, come on, you're really gonna debate that CP3 is better than Tatum right now?
Oh, do you want to move on to CP3? Let's move on to Chris Paul.
Sure, let's talk about it.
For me, this is pretty easy. In Chris Paul, last 3 playoff runs, we've seen a resurgence from the point guard. 19 points
Let's
and
look
9
at his
assists.
last playoff run because we're talking about right now. I don't give a
Well, let me do
damn
my
what
standards,
happened
then you
3
can
seasons
interject.
ago.
He's averaged
Okay, sorry, I
19
heard
points and
19
9
points.
assists on extreme efficiency his last
19.
3 playoff runs. Less turnovers than Jayson Tatum on 4 more assists per game. That's interesting. Also, Chris Paul, I mean, he's not a horrible defender. So when you look at 19 and 9 on extremely amazing efficiency and low turnovers, we're talking about a first ballot Hall of Famer here who's playing some of the best basketball in his career. I just don't think Tatum is on CP3's level yet.
Yeah, I just don't think you've watched enough Tatum recently to really have any say in this argument because you're still talking about a Tatum that was on a team with Taco Fall and Kemba Walker. That is an entirely different player. I don't know how many times I can say it. Tatum now is an elite level scorer, 27 a game across an entire season. Wonderful. An elite level defender. His playmaking, I see constant improvement season after season. There's passes he was making last season I didn't even see out there on the court. Watch him from the broadcast angle. He's just a guy who's continued to improve his game every season, year after year. And we've reached this point where he's just about entered his name into that top 10 range, I think exactly at 10. Not quite single digits, but he is the 10th best player in the NBA at this moment in time.
Who do you have over him?
Harden.
James Harden. Okay. See, yeah, that's what I mean. Like it could go either way. If you're talking about Harden that first year, the Nets definitely Harden's over Tatum.
Peak Harden's much better than peak Tatum.
Well, Tatum also hasn't even hit his prime yet, so that's also another.
Well, we can't look forward into the future and project on how.
Yeah, I'm talking about his peak thus far.
I can tell you what's going to happen in the future.
I wanted to look back
MVP.
at the Tatum that was playing with Kemba Walker and Taco Fall, and how he was so much worse. In that playoff run, he averaged more points, 1.4 less turnovers, 3.3 more rebounds. It was extremely more efficient than he was this most previous playoff run. But you're right, I'm being unfair by looking at that.
No, that's an entirely different player, though. Instinctively, he's just evolved. He's so much better now. How can you say that when you're not watching the Celtics games? How can you say he's not the same player? You're reading numbers off a stat sheet, but you're not seeing what he's doing out there on the floor.
Well, if we're just looking at the numbers, he's been worse recently. But I'm being fair to him by
look at the numbers. You of all people
I'm not looking at the numbers. I watched every Celtics playoff game last playoff run.
You're also trying to look at a Tatum that wasn't double teamed. You have to realize now he has to be more decisive and figure out what he's going to do because you have 2 bodies on him now. Now he has to pass out of double team, something that you were not seeing last season. You saw it every.
No, I saw every one of those turnovers he threw out, those double teams in the playoffs.
Okay, Tatum is one of the most double team players in the NBA after this past season. He was never seeing that before because he wasn't good enough to be calling them double teams, respectfully.
No, definitely. Even Ime has talked about it, that he's had to work with Jayson Tatum in terms of finding the open guy because he has not seen that, and it has shown throughout the season. There's been games where Tatum can just pass out the double team with ease, and then there's other games where he can't. But he's being more decisive. In the past, he was literally just your scoring forward. All he was there to do was score. I will give you that. That's why his shooting splits are probably better because he was not thinking. All he was doing was scoring. Now he actually has the keys to the team, has to think about what he's doing. And like you just can't compare the past to now. If you're talking about Tatum now, definitely top 10.
Yeah, the Tatum we see now is a two-way star. He's elite on both ends of the floor. I don't think past Tatum was elite on either end of the floor. He was a good scorer. You could argue elite, but he was far from an elite defender. I'd say average, above average at best.
Yeah. I'm
Well, the
telling
way
you,
I
that
look at
USA
it,
team, that USA team.
I think
doing good.
Ime's coaching presence has also helped him. I think Ime is a defensive mastermind, and that has made strides for Tatum's game.
well, like I said, the way I look at it, Tatum is still in the same mold he was 2 years ago in the bubble. I do not think his playmaking is elevated at all, especially when you look into all the turnovers.
That is objectively
Especially when
wrong.
you
That
let
is
me finish my
objectively
sentence.
wrong, saying his playmaking hasn't improved at all. Are you kidding me?
Oh, so you're not going to let me finish
Wow.
my sentence? That's interesting. What I was saying is it hasn't improved when you take into account the vast amount of turnovers that have come with it. I would have rather taken the Tatum that averaged 5 assists on 2.5 turnovers than the Tatum that averages 5.8 assists on 3.5 turnovers. That's what I was going to say. So like
Yeah.
I said, Tatum has still not broken out of the mold of a scoring wing. He still lacks the ability to uplift his team as a playmaker. And like I said, if his jump shot is not falling like we saw many times in the playoffs, that games that I watched, he got severely outplayed by the other team's best player.
Actually, I will say no, because there has been games where his shot is not falling and he almost has a triple double.
Game
Like,
one
he
of the
just
finals, for
facilitates.
example, I already brought it up. He shot like 2 for 14 or some, one of them Tatum games, but I had like 13 assists. He's gotten to the point where even if he's not scoring, he's still impacting the game in enough ways to be in the conversation for a top 10 player because he's just been that good lately.
Okay, so we've talked about 2 of the 4 guys in that discussion.
We
Chris
ain't
Paul
got
and
time
James
to talk
Harden.
about all the others. We genuinely do not have time. We've spent this whole time screaming at you for being objectively wrong. You like to refer to yourself as America's truth dealer. I think you're America's crackhead.
Well, like I said,
Can't
Tatum
believe
is still a
this.
scoring wing. He does not have the ability yet. He could one day be a top 10 player, but in my opinion, he's not better than Chris Paul, Damian Lillard, Anthony Davis, or James Harden until he can break out of this mold and really elevate his team.
So you have him ranked as the
Anthony
14th best player.
Davis?
Oh,
Yeah.
no, we'll say you have him ranked as the 14th best player.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in the last, 10, 15 years, very rarely, I don't know if ever, a team has made the finals without a top 10 player leading them the way. But I think that's going to do it for us in today's video. And ask that you please drop a like, subscribe, leave a comment. Rod, you didn't do the please.
Oh, please. I guess Chris Paul wasn't a top 10 player for the Suns 2 years ago. Oh.
Leave a comment. Where do you think Tatum ranks? Is Rod delusional? Is Victor Wembanyama going to be better than Tatum? Probably. We will see you guys in the next video.